I warned my wife. If you invite your male boss to your birthday, I'm out, she did, and gave him the my most special guest tag. When she got back, her boss stormed in screaming, "The company. His lawyer just called me. What did you make him do?" You'd think after 6 years of marriage, my wife Camille would know I don't bluff. I'm not one of those guys who throws around empty threats like confetti at a New Year's party. When I say something, I mean it with the full weight of my law degree and the emotional exhaustion of a man who's been watching his marriage circle the drain like bathwater that just won't quite disappear. So when I looked her dead in the eyes over our overpriced artisanal coffee one Tuesday morning and said, "If you invite your boss to your birthday party, I'm out," it wasn't a cute line delivered for dramatic effect. It wasn't me being jealous or insecure or whatever pop psychology term she'd probably Google later to justify ignoring me. It was a survival warning, the kind you give someone before they step on a landmine disguised as a LinkedIn connection. But of course, she laughed. Not a small, polite chuckle either. No, this was a full-blown, head thrown back, hand-on-chest laugh like I'd just told her the punchline to the world's funniest joke. "Relax, Mason," she said, waving her hand dismissively while scrolling through her phone with the other, probably already adding Grant to the guest list in her head. "He's just my mentor." She said the word mentor the way someone might say Gandhi or Oprah, like this man was some kind of enlightened business guru who descended from the corporate heavens to bless her career with his infinite wisdom. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there thinking mentors don't typically text at midnight with messages like, "Don't forget the red dress," my favorite. But hey, what do I know? I'm just the husband, the guy who pays half the mortgage and apparently exists solely to nod along to whatever fantasy narrative she's spinning this week. Yeah, mentors. Right. Because nothing says professional development quite like a married man reminding a married woman what color dress he wants to see her in. I'm sure that's covered extensively in all those leadership seminars she's always attending, probably right after Synergy and before Paradigm Shifts. The whole thing made my skin crawl, but pointing that out would have just earned me another lecture about how I don't understand office dynamics and how networking is crucial in marketing. Sure, sweetheart, network away. Just don't be surprised when your network starts looking suspiciously like an affair waiting to happen. I could already see the disaster forming in real time, like watching a loading bar fill up on the world's worst download. 1 dot, 2 dots, full signal. Connection complete. Welcome to hell, population, your marriage. Camille had this irritating habit of mistaking attention for admiration, like she genuinely couldn't tell the difference between someone respecting her professional abilities and someone just wanting to get in her pants. To her, every compliment was genuine. Every lingering glance was appreciation for her innovative campaign strategies, and every late-night text was just her boss being really committed to the team's success. Meanwhile, I'm over here with a front-row seat to what's basically a slow-motion car crash, and I've got the habit of pretending to care about her office drama, because that's what you do when you're married, right? You listen, you nod. You make supportive noises while internally calculating how much a good divorce attorney costs these days. That night, while Camille sat on our couch surrounded by laptop screens and notebook paper, like some kind of party planning general orchestrating a military operation, ordering metallic balloons and a custom cake shaped like her initials, because apparently, sich in fondant is the peak of sophistication, I was ordering something else entirely. Something she wouldn't see coming because she was too busy debating whether rose gold or champagne gold better matched her aesthetic. I pulled up my laptop, opened a secure browser, and started drafting an email to my firm's legal review department. Because here's the thing about being married to a marketing director who flirts for sport and treats professional boundaries like suggestions rather than rules. You keep receipts. You document. You prepare. Call it paranoid if you want, but I prefer the term strategically cautious. I've spent the last 6 years watching Camille navigate her career with the ethical flexibility of a yoga instructor, bending rules I didn't even know existed. She's charming, I'll give her that. She can walk into a room and have everyone eating out of her hand within 5 minutes, laughing at her jokes, agreeing with her ideas, generally acting like she's the most fascinating person they've ever encountered. It's a gift, really. A gift that's served her well professionally and made my life a special kind of complicated personally. Because when you're that good at performing, at making people believe whatever version of reality you're selling, the lines start to blur. What's real? What's strategy? What's just Camille being Camille? And what's Camille actively making terrible decisions that'll blow up in both our faces? I didn't need to be Sherlock Holmes to figure out where this birthday party situation was heading. Grant Whitmore, her boss, the guy who signs her paychecks and apparently her self-esteem, was going to show up. He was going to bring some expensive, thoughtful gift that proved he really knows her. He was going to make some toast or speech that walked right up to the line of inappropriate without quite crossing it, because guys like Grant are masters at plausible deniability. And Camille was going to glow under all that attention like she'd been plugged into an outlet, completely oblivious, or maybe just willfully ignorant, to how the whole thing looked, how it made me feel, how it made us look as a couple. But fine, she wanted to throw her party. She wanted Grant there. Who was I to stand in the way of her special day? I'm not a monster. I'm not going to ruin her birthday by throwing a tantrum or issuing ultimatums she'd just ignore anyway. No, I'd do something much smarter. I'd prepare. Because Grant Whitmore wasn't just her boss. Grant Whitmore was the CEO of Whitmore and Associates, a mid-sized marketing firm that had recently landed on my company's radar for some questionable financial practices. Nothing concrete yet, just whispers, red flags, the kind of thing that makes compliance attorneys like me start digging. And wouldn't you know it, I'd just been assigned to the preliminary review. Conflict of interest? Absolutely. The kind that could tank someone's career if not properly disclosed and managed. The kind that made a wife posting Instagram photos tagged with most special guest look really, really bad for everyone involved. Did Camille know this? Of course not. She never asked about my work, never cared beyond vague questions about whether I had a good day or a stressful day. She had no idea I was currently knee-deep in files that could potentially send her precious mentor straight to corporate hell. So while she hummed along to whatever pop song was playing through her earbuds, addressing invitation envelopes in her perfectly looped handwriting, I was opening secure documents and making notes. Just in case. Just because I'm the kind of guy who likes having options, who likes being 10 steps ahead, who refuses to be the idiot husband who didn't see it coming. Call it petty. Call it calculating. Call it whatever you want. I call it insurance. Camille's birthday party looked like what would happen if a corporate mixer and an Instagram influencer's dream wedding had a baby, and that baby had unlimited access to her father's credit card. I'm talking champagne fountains, plural, because apparently one wasn't enough to properly celebrate turning 32. There was a live band playing jazzy versions of pop songs, the kind of music that makes you feel like you're in a fancy hotel lobby waiting for someone important who's never going to show up. The lighting was so dramatically arranged, with purple and gold uplights strategically placed around our backyard, that even the cocktail shrimp on the appetizer table looked like they'd been professionally photographed for a food magazine. Everything had this glossy, overly polished sheen to it, like Camille had hired someone whose entire job description was make everything look expensive on social media. Which, knowing my wife, she probably did. This wasn't just a birthday party. This was content. This was her chance to prove to everyone following her perfectly curated Instagram account that she was living her best life, that she was successful and admired and surrounded by people who absolutely definitely weren't just there for the free premium alcohol. I stood near the bar, because if I was going to watch this train wreck unfold, I was going to need something stronger than the cucumber water the catering staff kept trying to push on everyone, and observe the guest list with the detached interest of an anthropologist studying a particularly bizarre tribe. There were her co-workers, all dressed like they were attending a charity gala instead of a backyard barbecue that had gotten seriously out of hand. There were the neighbors, looking uncomfortable and overdressed, probably wondering why they'd been invited to what was clearly not a neighborhood-friendly event. And there were the influencer friends, the ones who'd shown up with ring lights and phone tripods, already filming everything for their stories. I nursed my whiskey and watched Camille work the crowd like a politician on election night, touching arms, throwing her head back in exaggerated laughter, making everyone feel like they were the most important person she'd talked to all evening. It was impressive, really, in a deeply exhausting sort of way. She was wearing the red dress. Of course, she was wearing the red dress. The one Grant had texted about. The one that probably cost more than our monthly utility bill. The one that hugged every curve and made sure nobody at this party could possibly forget whose birthday it was. Her hair was done in those perfectly imperfect waves that take 2 hours and a professional to achieve, and her makeup looked like it had been applied by someone who charged by the minute. She looked stunning. She always looked stunning. That was never the problem. The problem walked in at 8:15, fashionably late because men like Grant Whitmore think making an entrance is a personality trait. I saw him before Camille did, watched him pause at the entrance to our backyard like he was waiting for a spotlight to find him, and I swear to God, I felt my blood pressure spike so hard my Apple Watch probably logged it as a workout. Grant Whitmore had the charisma of an expired credit card and the charm of a parking ticket you find on your windshield after you've already had a terrible day. He was one of those guys who thought confidence meant walking around like the world owed him something, like everyone should be grateful he'd graced them with his presence. He strutted, and I do mean strutted, like a rooster who'd just won a cockfight, into the party wearing sunglasses indoors because apparently his eyes were too important to be subjected to our tastefully arranged string lights. He was holding a gift bag, one of those oversized designer ones with rope handles and tissue paper exploding out the top, like a particularly aggressive flower arrangement, carrying it like it contained the secrets of the universe, or maybe the Holy Grail, or at the very least something that cost more than my car payment. His suit probably cost $3,000, tailored to within an inch of its life, the kind of thing you wear when you need everyone to know you make more money than them. His hair was slicked back with what I assumed was some kind of premium hair product that cost $40 an ounce, and he had that perpetual smirk that guys develop when they've spent too long believing their own hype. I watched Camille's face light up when she spotted him, watched her excuse herself from whatever conversation she was pretending to care about, and practically flowed across the yard to greet him. They hugged. Too long. Too familiar. The kind of hug that makes everyone watching feel like they're intruding on something private. He said something in her ear that made her laugh, that real laugh she used to save for me back when we still had things to laugh about together. Then he handed her the gift bag with this theatrical flourish, like he was presenting her with an Oscar, and I had to grip my whiskey glass a little tighter to keep from throwing it. The party continued around me like I was a rock in a stream, people flowing past, music playing, conversations happening in that loud-talking way people do when they've had 2 drinks and think they're more interesting than they actually are. Camille's friend Monica came up to me at one point, already tipsy, and said something about how lucky Camille is to have such a supportive husband, and I smiled and nodded and wanted to ask her if she'd recently suffered a head injury. Supportive, right? Because standing here watching my wife's boss treat our home like his personal networking event was exactly the kind of support I'd always dreamed of providing. Then came the moment I'd been dreading, the one I'd known was coming since the moment Grant walked in with his stupid sunglasses and his stupid gift bag. Camille climbed onto a chair, actually climbed onto a chair like she was running for office, and clinked her champagne glass with one of those little forks they provide at fancy events for this exact purpose. The crowd quieted down, faces turning toward her with varying degrees of interest and inebriation. She was glowing, absolutely radiant with attention and champagne and the thrill of being the center of everyone's universe for one night. And then she opened her mouth and said the words that would later play on repeat in my head during every sleepless night that followed. "I just want to thank everyone for coming tonight to celebrate with me," she began, her voice carrying across the yard with the practiced ease of someone who gives presentations for a living. "But there's someone special I need to recognize. Someone who's been such an incredible mentor, supporter, and friend." My stomach dropped. I knew exactly where this was going, could see the train wreck about to happen in slow motion, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do to stop it. "Grant, could you come up here?" She extended her hand toward him like a queen summoning a knight, and he obliged. Of course he obliged, moving through the crowd with that insufferable confidence while people clapped politely, probably confused about who he was and why he was getting special recognition at someone's birthday party. Camille raised her glass higher, smiled bright enough to power a small city, and delivered the final blow. "To my most special guest, Grant, thank you for everything you do, for believing in me, for pushing me to be better. I wouldn't be where I am without you." The crowd cheered and raised their glasses, completely oblivious to what had just happened, to what those words meant, to how they sounded coming out of a married woman's mouth in front of her husband. But I heard it. I felt it. You could have heard my dignity pack its things, call an Uber, and leave the premises entirely. It was the sound of something breaking, not dramatically or loudly, but with that quiet finality of a door closing for the last time. I didn't make a scene. That's not my style. And besides, what would it accomplish? Screaming at my wife in front of 50 people while Grant stood there smirking? No thanks. I had a better plan, one that required patience and precision rather than emotional outbursts. So I smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach your eyes, the kind that feels like it might crack your face in half. I finished my whiskey in one long swallow, set the glass down on the nearest table with deliberate care, and walked over to where Camille was still standing on that chair, still basking in her moment. I leaned in close enough that only she could hear me over the music and conversation that had resumed, and whispered 2 words, "Happy birthday." Then I walked out. Not dramatically, not with a door slam or a speech or any of the theatrical exits people expect when someone's had enough. Just efficiently, purposefully, like I was clocking out of a terrible job at the end of a shift I should have quit years ago. I grabbed my keys from the hook by the door, stepped through our house, past the catering staff cleaning in the kitchen, past the coats piled on our bed, past all the evidence of a party I'd never wanted, and got in my car. The music and laughter faded as I pulled out of the driveway, and for the first time in hours, possibly months, I felt like I could actually breathe. Camille didn't call that night. Not even a "where are you" text, not a "are you okay?" Not even one of those passive-aggressive question marks that wives send when they're annoyed but trying to pretend they're not. Nothing. Radio silence. Complete and total communication blackout, like I'd driven off the edge of the earth and she hadn't even noticed the absence of gravity. I guess when you're the star of your own birthday movie, when you're the leading lady in the romantic comedy playing exclusively in your head, the director's husband doesn't really matter. I was what they call in the film industry background talent. The guy who's technically in the scene but could be replaced by literally anyone and nobody would notice or care. Hell, I could have been played by a cardboard cutout, and it would have had the same emotional impact on the evening's festivities. I drove around for a while after I left, not really going anywhere specific, just putting distance between myself and that backyard circus. I ended up at a 24-hour diner off the highway, the kind of place that smells like coffee and broken dreams, where the waitresses call you Han and don't ask questions when a guy in a button-down shirt shows up alone at 10:30 on a Saturday night looking like he's just witnessed his own funeral. I ordered coffee that tasted like it had been brewed sometime during the Clinton administration and sat in a corner booth, watching my phone not light up with messages from my wife. It was almost fascinating, in a morbid sort of way, watching the minutes tick by and realizing that she genuinely didn't care where I was or whether I was coming back. She was probably still at the party, still holding court, still laughing at Grant's jokes and pretending that everything was absolutely perfect in her meticulously curated life. But while she was cutting cake, probably a vanilla bean situation with buttercream frosting and those little edible flowers that cost $8 each, I was cutting ties. Quietly, methodically, with the cold precision of a surgeon removing something malignant. See, the thing about being a corporate attorney is that you learn pretty quickly how to protect yourself, how to move assets, how to build walls that look invisible until someone tries to climb over them. I pulled out my laptop right there in that sad little diner, connected to the VPN on my phone, and got to work. First order of business. Our joint credit card, the one we'd opened 3 years ago because Camille insisted that shared finances are healthy for a marriage, and I'd been stupid enough to believe that meant we were building something together instead of giving her unlimited access to my credit limit. I logged into the account, navigated to the card management section, and hit the freeze button with the kind of satisfaction most people reserve for popping bubble wrap. Frozen. Done. Every transaction she tried to make from this point forward would be declined, and she'd have to call the bank to figure out why, and they'd tell her that the primary account holder, that would be me, had restricted access. Then I moved on to my business account, the one with my consulting fees and my salary direct deposits, and rerouted everything to a new account I'd opened last month at a completely different bank. Call it paranoid, call it petty, call it whatever makes you feel better, but I call it smart. I'd watched too many guys get cleaned out by wives who suddenly decided that what's yours is mine applied to bank accounts, but not to loyalty or respect. The locks were next on my list. And yeah, I know that sounds dramatic, like something out of a daytime talk show where everyone's screaming and throwing chairs, but hear me out. Our house is in my name. I bought it 2 years before I met Camille, back when I was a junior associate pulling 80-hour weeks and living on takeout and ambition. When we got married, I added her to the title because that's what you do when you love someone and trust them and think you're building a future together. But the mortgage? That's all me, buddy. Every payment, every repair, every time something breaks and needs fixing. That's my money, my credit, my problem. So changing the locks on my own house wasn't some psychotic power play. It was a boundary. Remember boundaries? Camille loved talking about boundaries in therapy, loved throwing that word around like it was a magic spell that would fix everything wrong with us. We need better boundaries, Mason. Well, sweetheart, a new deadbolt is about as clear a boundary as it gets. I made a call to a 24-hour locksmith because apparently everything in this city operates around the clock to accommodate people having emotional breakdowns and arrange for them to come out first thing in the morning. Cash payment, receipt under a different name, the works. They probably thought I was paranoid or having an affair or running from the mob, but they didn't ask questions, and I didn't volunteer information. That's the beautiful thing about paying people well. They stop caring about why you need their services and just focus on providing them. But the real masterpiece, the piece de resistance of my late-night strategic planning session, was the email. I sat there in that diner booth with my terrible coffee and my laptop and composed what I can only describe as a work of art disguised as professional correspondence. Subject line, conflict of interest, urgent. Short, professional, the kind of thing that makes people's hearts skip a beat when they see it in their inbox because they know it's not going to be good news. In the body of the email, I kept it brief and devastating. Per company policy regarding conflicts of interest and potential ethics violations, I'm submitting formal disclosure of a personal relationship that may impact the ongoing Whitmore and Associates review. Attached, please find photographic evidence requiring immediate assessment by the Ethics Committee and senior partners. And then, because I'm nothing if not thorough, I attached a photo. Not just any photo. The perfect photo, the one that someone had posted to Instagram and tagged both Camille and Grant in, because people are so obsessed with documenting every moment of their lives that they create evidence without even realizing it. There they were, my wife and her mentor, smiling at each other like they were the only two people at the party. His hand on her waist, her hand on his arm, both of them holding champagne glasses and looking for all the world like a couple celebrating their anniversary instead of a boss and his employee at a birthday party that happened to include her husband somewhere in the background, probably looking miserable. The beauty of the photo was its ambiguity. It didn't show them kissing or doing anything explicitly inappropriate. But it showed enough, the body language, the proximity, the casual intimacy of two people who were way too comfortable with each other. And in the context of a company under legal review for potential fraud, with me as one of the reviewing attorneys and her as an employee of that company who'd just publicly declared her boss her most special guest, that photo was a grenade with the pin already pulled, and I just lobbed it directly into the Ethics Committee's inbox. I addressed the email to 3 people, my direct supervisor, the head of our legal review department, and the company's ethics officer. Then I hovered over the send button for exactly 30 seconds, giving myself time to reconsider, to think about whether I really wanted to do this, whether I was overreacting, whether maybe I should just go home and try to talk to Camille like a rational adult in a functional marriage. But then I remembered her standing on that chair, raising her glass to Grant, calling him her most special guest, while I stood there like a fucking ghost at my own wife's party, and I clicked send with zero regrets. The email whooshed off into the digital void, and I closed my laptop with the satisfaction of someone who'd just finished a particularly challenging puzzle. It was nearly midnight by then, and the diner was emptying out except for a couple of truckers and a woman who looked like she was hiding from her own life in a corner booth similar to mine. I paid my bill, left a generous tip because the waitress had kept my coffee cup full without trying to make conversation, and headed to a hotel. Not a fancy one. I wasn't trying to make some grand statement or live it up like I was on vacation. Just a clean, quiet place with a bed and a lock on the door and absolutely zero chance of running into my wife. I checked in using my business credit card, the one Camille didn't have access to, and took the elevator up to a room on the 4th floor that smelled like industrial cleaning products and had art on the walls that looked like someone had sneezed paint onto a canvas and called it abstract expressionism. I kicked off my shoes, loosened my tie, and lay down on the bed fully clothed, staring at the ceiling and waiting for guilt or regret or some kind of emotional response to hit me. But it never came. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, maybe years: relief. Pure, uncomplicated relief, like I'd been holding my breath underwater and finally broken the surface. My phone sat on the nightstand, still silent, still absent of any messages from Camille, and I realized I didn't care anymore. The silence didn't hurt. It was just confirmation of what I'd already known, that I'd stopped mattering to her a long time ago, and she'd stopped mattering to me somewhere along the way too. For days. That's how long it took for Camille to notice I hadn't come home. 4 whole days of her living her best life, posting Instagram stories from the office, sharing motivational quotes about boss babes and women who hustle, presumably basking in the afterglow of her spectacular birthday party while I sat in a moderately depressing hotel room, eating room service, and watching cable news like a divorced dad in a mid-budget drama. 4 days of absolute radio silence. No calls, no texts, no "hey, are you alive?" check-ins, nothing. It was almost impressive, really. The level of obliviousness required to not notice your husband has essentially vanished from your life. But then again, Camille had always been exceptional at ignoring things that didn't fit into her carefully constructed narrative. So why should my absence be any different? When she finally did show up at the house, our house, my house, the distinction was about to become very important. It was late afternoon on a Thursday. I'd taken the day off work, told my assistant I had some personal matters to handle, which was the understatement of the century. I was sitting in the living room, my living room, with a glass of bourbon that was probably too expensive to be drinking at 3 in the afternoon, but felt entirely appropriate given the circumstances. I'd spent the morning arranging things, making sure everything was exactly where it needed to be, setting the stage for what was about to be either the most satisfying or most disastrous conversation of my marriage. Possibly both. I heard her before I saw her, heard the click-clack of her heels on the front walkway, that confident stride she had, the walk of someone who'd just crushed a presentation or closed a deal, or maybe just received another midnight text from her mentor telling her how special she was. She was humming, actually humming, like she'd just won Employee of the Year or gotten a promotion or discovered the secret to eternal happiness in the bottom of a champagne flute. The sound drifted through the door, muffled but unmistakable, and I took another sip of bourbon and waited. The door opened. She still had her old key, the one that was about to become a very expensive souvenir, and she breezed in like she owned the place. Which, legally speaking, she sort of did, but we'd get to that in a minute. She tossed her designer purse onto the couch, the kind of bag that costs more than some people's monthly rent, and always seemed to be spilling receipts and lipsticks, and those little sample perfumes she collected from department stores. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was flawless. Her outfit screamed, "I'm important and successful and definitely not going through a marital crisis." She looked happy. Genuinely, annoyingly, obliviously happy. "Did you miss me?" she asked, her voice dripping with that playful tone she used when she thought she was being charming. Like this was all just a minor misunderstanding. Like I'd stormed off after a little argument, and now we were going to kiss and make up and pretend everything was fine. Like the last 4 days hadn't happened. Like her birthday party hadn't been a masterclass in humiliation. Like we were still playing happy marriage instead of whatever twisted game this had become. I looked at her over the rim of my glass, taking my time, letting the silence stretch out until it got uncomfortable. "Sure," I finally said, my voice flat and emotionless as concrete. Like I miss food poisoning. Or jury duty. Or that time I had to get a root canal without enough anesthesia. Her smile faltered just a little bit, confusion flickering across her face like she wasn't quite sure if I was joking or not. Spoiler alert, I wasn't. She opened her mouth to respond, probably to laugh it off or make some witty comeback, but then she noticed something. I saw it happen in real time, watched her brain process the information, saw the exact moment the confusion turned to realization. Her key was still in her hand, the old key, the one she'd just used to try to open the door. Except the door had already been unlocked when she turned the knob. She'd used her key, turned it, felt it move in the lock, but something had felt wrong. Different. Off. "Mason," she said slowly, looking from the key in her hand to the door and back to me. Did you change the locks?" Her voice had lost that playful edge, replaced by something harder, sharper, like she was starting to understand that maybe this wasn't going to be the easy reconciliation she'd apparently been expecting. Her smile twitched at the corners, trying to hold its shape, but starting to crack around the edges. Boundaries, remember? I said, settling back into the couch like I was explaining basic arithmetic to a particularly slow student. You said they're healthy. You said we needed better boundaries in our marriage. I think those were your exact words during our last therapy session, which you skipped, by the way. So I took your advice. And honestly, you were right. Boundaries are incredibly healthy. Life-changing, even. I should have listened to you years ago. She just stood there, frozen in the entryway with her expensive purse and her designer shoes and her perfectly styled hair, looking like someone had just told her that gravity was optional and she wasn't sure whether to be excited or terrified. I could practically see the wheels turning in her head, trying to figure out if this was some kind of elaborate joke, some test she was supposed to pass, some game with rules she didn't understand. But this wasn't a game. Games have winners and losers, and at this point, we'd both already lost. I was just making sure the final score was accurately recorded. I don't understand, she said, and for the first time in maybe ever, she sounded genuinely uncertain. Camille was never uncertain. She was confident, assured, always ready with an answer or an excuse or a perfectly crafted explanation for whatever situation she found herself in. But right now, standing in the doorway of a house she could no longer access without my permission, she looked lost. Let me help you with that, I said, gesturing to the coffee table where a thick brown envelope sat, her name written across the front in my handwriting. It had been sitting there for an hour, positioned perfectly so she couldn't miss it, couldn't pretend she hadn't seen it, couldn't make excuses later about how she didn't know or didn't understand. There's some reading material for you. Consider it a belated birthday gift, since I apparently didn't get you anything memorable at your party. Well, except for the gift of my absence, but that doesn't really come with a card. She moved toward the table like she was approaching a bomb that might detonate if she breathed wrong. Picked up the envelope with hands that I noticed were shaking slightly. Good. She should be nervous. She opened it carefully, pulled out the papers inside, and I watched her eyes scan the first page. Then the second. Then back to the first, like maybe she'd misread something. Like maybe this was all some terrible mistake that would clear itself up if she just looked at it from a different angle. This is our prenup, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But it's different. These terms. She looked up at me, her face gone pale under her foundation, all that confidence and swagger evaporating like water on hot pavement. Mason, what is this? That's the updated version, I explained, taking another leisurely sip of my bourbon. The one we signed a year ago when we refinanced the house. Remember? You were so busy with that big campaign launch, and I told you we needed to sign some paperwork for the refi, and you said, and I quote, "I trust you with anything, babe, just tell me where to sign." So I did. I told you where to sign, and you signed, right there at the bottom of page 6, and again on page 12, and once more on page 18. Your signature's all over this thing. Very official, very legal, very much enforceable in any court in the state. She flipped through the pages frantically now, not really reading anymore, just looking for something that would make this make sense, some loophole or escape hatch or evidence that this was all some elaborate misunderstanding. But this says, Mason, this says I'm not entitled to anything. The house, your retirement accounts, your business assets, everything's protected. This isn't what we agreed to when we got married. This isn't. You're absolutely right, I interrupted, standing up and walking over to where she stood, close enough to see the panic starting to bloom in her eyes. This isn't what we agreed to when we got married. When we got married, we agreed to be faithful. We agreed to be partners. We agreed to respect each other and prioritize our relationship over our careers and not invite our bosses to birthday parties and call them our most special guests while our husbands stand in the corner like decorative plants. But then things changed, didn't they? Circumstances evolved. Situations developed. And I adapted accordingly. You tricked me, she whispered, clutching the papers like they might transform into something else if she held them tight enough. You lied to me. You told me this was for the refinance. I told you we needed to sign paperwork for the refinance. I corrected. Which was true. We didn't need to sign refinance paperwork. We also needed to sign an updated prenup, which I mentioned was included in the documents. You just didn't bother to read what you were signing because you were too busy, too distracted, too confident that I'd never do anything that wasn't completely in your best interest. You said you trusted me with anything, Camille. So I trusted that you wouldn't read the fine print. Turns out we were both right. Camille tried pretending nothing happened for approximately 18 hours, which was actually longer than I'd expected given her usual inability to confront reality when it didn't align with her preferred narrative. She spent that night in the guest room, which was generous of me to allow, considering she technically had no legal right to be in my house anymore. But I'm not a complete monster, and emerged the next morning acting like we'd just had a minor disagreement about where to go for dinner rather than a nuclear detonation of our marriage. She made coffee, did her makeup, got dressed in one of those power suits she wore when she needed to feel in control, and headed off to work like everything was absolutely fine and we definitely weren't 2 signatures away from divorce proceedings. I, meanwhile, worked from home that day because I had a feeling things were about to get interesting and I wanted a front row seat to the implosion. I set myself up in the home office with my laptop, a fresh pot of coffee, and the kind of anticipation you get right before a really good plot twist in a movie you've been waiting months to see. I'd sent that email 4 days ago. For days for it to circulate through the proper channels, for the ethics committee to convene, for people way above my pay grade to start asking uncomfortable questions about conflicts of interest and professional boundaries, and why exactly one of their reviewing attorneys had a wife who was publicly celebrating her boss, while said boss was under investigation for financial misconduct. These things take time, bureaucracy being what it is, but I knew the clock was ticking. It was just a matter of when, not if. The call came at 10:47 in the morning. I know the exact time because I was watching the clock like a kid on Christmas Eve, except instead of waiting for Santa, I was waiting for karma to show up with receipts and a really bad attitude. I heard Camille's phone ring from where I sat in my office, heard her answer it in that professional voice she used for work calls, all crisp and efficient and ready to solve whatever problem had come up. Camille Harper speaking, she said, like she was auditioning for the role of successful marketing executive in a corporate training video. Then I heard the screaming. Not her screaming, Grant screaming. I couldn't make out the exact words from where I sat, but I didn't need to. The tone was unmistakable, that specific pitch of panic mixed with rage that people hit when their entire world is crumbling and they need someone to blame. It was beautiful, honestly, like listening to a symphony composed entirely of consequences. I took a sip of my coffee, perfectly brewed, strong enough to wake the dead, exactly the way I liked it, and waited. What? Grant, slow down. I can't. Camille's voice cut through the house, confusion turning to alarm. What do you mean the company? What lawyer? Grant, you're not making any sense. More screaming from his end, loud enough that I could hear it even though I wasn't on the call, could hear him absolutely losing his mind in real time. What did you do? The company. His lawyer just called me. Perfect timing. Absolutely perfect. I couldn't have choreographed it better if I tried. I imagined Grant in his corner office, probably pacing back and forth in his $3,000 suit, his hair no longer perfectly slicked back, his composure completely shattered as he realized that his company was under serious legal scrutiny, and it was all connected to a stupid birthday party where he'd gotten too comfortable, too cocky, too careless about boundaries and optics, and the basic professional standards that exist for exactly this reason. See, here's what had happened while Camille was busy pretending everything was fine and Grant was probably busy sending inappropriate midnight texts to other employees. My email had made its way through the proper channels. The ethics committee had reviewed the photo, cross-referenced it with the ongoing investigation into Whitmore and Associates, and realized they had a major problem. One of their attorneys, me, was married to an employee of a company under review, and that employee had publicly and enthusiastically demonstrated a personal relationship with the CEO of said company. That's not just a conflict of interest. That's an ethics violation so obvious you could see it from space. So they'd done what any responsible legal department would do. They'd escalated. They'd notified senior partners, who'd notified the company's general counsel, who'd immediately started damage control procedures, which meant pulling me off the Whitmore and Associates review, not as punishment, just as standard conflict protocol, and assigning new attorneys to the case. Fresh eyes, no personal connections, no reason to show favoritism or bias in either direction. And those new attorneys, unencumbered by any loyalty or personal relationship to anyone involved, had apparently found some very interesting things in Whitmore and Associates' financial records. Things that Grant had probably been hoping would stay buried under a mountain of paperwork and creative accounting. I heard footsteps, fast and frantic, coming toward my office. The door burst open and there was Camille, phone still clutched in her hand, her face pale and her eyes wide with the kind of panic that comes from finally understanding you've massively screwed up, but having no idea how or why or what to do about it. "Mason," she said, her voice shaking. "Mason, Grant is freaking out. He's saying something about lawyers and investigations and the company freezing accounts. He's saying this is my fault. That we." She stopped, swallowed hard, her brain clearly working overtime to connect dots she should have seen coming from a mile away. "What did you do?" I leaned back in my chair, cradling my coffee mug, and gave her my best impression of innocent confusion. "Me? I didn't do anything. Well, nothing illegal anyway. I simply followed protocol. When I realized there might be a conflict of interest between my professional responsibilities and my personal life, I disclosed it to the appropriate parties. That's literally in my job description, Camille. It's what ethical attorneys do when they discover potential conflicts. I'm honestly surprised you're surprised. You're the one who's always talking about integrity and professional standards and doing the right thing even when it's hard. You reported us?" Her voice cracked on the last word, like the full weight of what was happening was finally sinking in. "You told them about Grant and me?" "I reported a potential conflict of interest," I corrected, enjoying this way more than I probably should have. "I submitted photographic evidence of a personal relationship between an employee of a company under review and that company's CEO. The fact that the employee happens to be my wife is unfortunate but irrelevant. The fact that you chose to make that relationship very public, very obvious, and very questionable in terms of professional boundaries? Well, that's on you, sweetheart. I just provided the documentation." She stared at me like I'd grown a second head, like the man she'd married had been replaced by a stranger who spoke the same language but operated according to completely different rules. "But you're ruining everything. Grant's company, my job, my career. Mason, they're going to think I'm involved in whatever they're investigating. They're going to think I knew something, that I was part of it." "Were you?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Part of it, I mean. Did you know Grant was cooking the books or fudging numbers or whatever creative financial gymnastics he was doing that attracted legal attention in the first place? Because if you did, you should probably lawyer up. Not with me, obviously, since I have that whole conflict of interest thing now. But maybe someone from another firm, someone who specializes in white-collar defense." "I didn't know anything," she practically shouted, frustration and fear mixing into something close to hysteria. "I'm in marketing, Mason. I don't have anything to do with the financial side of the business. I just create campaigns and manage clients and—" She stopped, realization dawning. "This is revenge. You're doing this because of the party, because I invited Grant, because you're jealous and petty and—" "Jealous?" I interrupted, setting my coffee down and standing up, walking toward her until we were face to face. "Camille, I'm not jealous. Jealousy requires caring about something enough to want to keep it. What I am is done. Done with being an afterthought in my own marriage. Done with watching you prioritize your boss over your husband. Done with being the guy who stands in the corner at parties while his wife toasts to someone else being her most special guest. This isn't revenge. This is consequences. There's a difference." Her phone rang again, Grant's name flashing on the screen, and she looked at it like it was a live grenade. She didn't answer. Couldn't answer, probably, because what was she going to say? How was she going to explain that her husband had just professionally nuked both of them using nothing but proper legal protocol and a well-timed disclosure? The phone kept ringing, insistent and angry, and I could almost hear Grant on the other end, screaming into the void, watching his company implode in real time because he'd been too arrogant to maintain appropriate boundaries with his employees. "You need to fix this," Camille whispered, her voice small and desperate. "Please, Mason, call them back. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them there's no conflict. Tell them." "No," I said simply, returning to my chair and picking up my coffee. "I'm not fixing anything. This is the bed you made, Camille. Time to lie in it." Although probably not in this house, since legally speaking, you don't live here anymore. You might want to start looking at apartments. I hear there are some nice studios downtown, very affordable for someone who's about to be unemployed. Camille's office life crumbled faster than her gluten-free cake, and with roughly the same level of dignity, which is to say, none at all. It was actually impressive how quickly everything fell apart once the dominoes started tipping, like watching a carefully constructed house of cards collapse in real time, except the cards were made of bad decisions and professional misconduct. Within 48 hours of Grant's panic call, her entire career was in free fall, and I had the best seat in the house to watch it all go down. Not because I was actively involved. I'd already played my part by following proper legal protocol, but because Camille, in her infinite wisdom, kept coming back to the house to tell me about every new catastrophe like I was her therapist instead of the husband she'd publicly humiliated. The first major blow came when their biggest client, some tech startup that sold overpriced smart home devices nobody needed, pulled their account. Just completely ghosted the agency, sent a terse email about reevaluating their marketing partnerships in light of recent developments, and took their six-figure annual contract somewhere else. Apparently, when you're a startup trying to convince investors you're legitimate and professional, you don't want to be associated with a marketing firm whose CEO is under investigation for financial fraud and whose marketing director is splashed all over social media calling that CEO her most special guest. Bad optics, as Camille would say. Really, really bad optics. Then another client left. Then another. It was like rats abandoning a sinking ship, except the rats were Fortune 500 companies and wellness brands and boutique hotels, all of them suddenly very concerned about their reputation and very eager to distance themselves from Whitmore and Associates before the stink of scandal stuck to them too. Camille tried to do damage control, sent emails assuring clients that she had nothing to do with the investigation, that her work was completely separate from any financial improprieties, that they could trust her to continue delivering exceptional results. But trust is a funny thing. Once it's broken, it's really hard to glue back together, especially when the person asking you to trust them has recently demonstrated spectacularly poor judgment in both their personal and professional life. HR got involved next, because of course they did. When you work at a company that's under legal investigation and you're publicly connected to the CEO in ways that look decidedly unprofessional, HR tends to take an interest in your activities. They flagged her profile for review, which is corporate speak for, "We're building a file on you in case we need to fire you without getting sued." They started asking questions about her relationship with Grant, about whether any of her projects or promotions had been influenced by their personal connection, about whether she'd ever received preferential treatment or inappropriate communications. All very professional, all very by the book, all very much the beginning of the end. Camille insisted she had nothing to hide, which was hilarious coming from someone who'd been hiding midnight texts from her boss for months. She sat through meetings with HR representatives who smiled with their mouths, but not their eyes, who took notes on everything she said and probably didn't believe a word of it. She came home. Well, to my home, since it definitely wasn't hers anymore, ranting about how unfair it all was, how she was being persecuted for something she didn't do, how this was all a massive overreaction to a simple birthday party. It was just a party, Mason, she'd scream at me while I made dinner and pretended to listen. People invite their bosses to parties all the time. It's called networking. Sure, I'd say, not looking up from the vegetables I was chopping. People also call their bosses most special guests all the time. Totally normal. Completely professional. Nothing weird about that at all. The sarcasm was so thick you could spread it on toast, but Camille was apparently immune to subtext at this point. But the real nail in the coffin, the thing that transformed this from a professional disaster into a full-blown career extinction event, came courtesy of a blog called Corporate Confessions. If you've never heard of Corporate Confessions, congratulations, you probably have better things to do with your time than read anonymous workplace drama on the internet. It's basically a gossip site for office workers, where people submit stories about their terrible bosses and incompetent coworkers and inappropriate office relationships, all under the protective shield of anonymity. Think of it as therapy for people who can't afford actual therapy, but can afford unlimited data plans. Someone, and I have my suspicions about who, though I'd never admit it in a court of law, submitted the story of Camille's birthday party to Corporate Confessions. And not just a bland summary either. This was a full expose, complete with photos from Instagram, screenshots of Camille's toast to Grant, a detailed timeline of events, and some truly spectacular commentary about professional boundaries and what happens when you mix personal ambition with terrible judgment. The article went live on a Tuesday morning, and by Tuesday afternoon it had been shared approximately 8,000 times across LinkedIn, Twitter, and every other social media platform where board office workers congregate to judge other people's mistakes. The headline alone was a masterpiece. When birthdays become evidence, a marketing director's guide to ending your career in one Instagram post. I actually laughed out loud when I first saw it, sitting in my office with my morning coffee, scrolling through my phone and discovering that my wife had become internet famous for all the wrong reasons. The article itself was even better, written with the kind of savage professionalism that only comes from someone who really understands corporate culture and knows exactly where to stick the knife for maximum damage. In what can only be described as a masterclass in career self-destruction, the article began, marketing director Camille Harper threw herself a birthday party that will likely be studied in business school ethics classes for years to come. The event, which featured champagne fountains and enough Instagram content to fill a small database, might have been just another excessive millennial celebration if not for one tiny detail. Harper decided to publicly toast her boss, Grant Whitmore, as her most special guest approximately 48 hours before Whitmore's company became the subject of a legal investigation into financial misconduct. Coincidence? Perhaps. Professional suicide? Absolutely. It got worse from there. The article dissected every aspect of the party, from the timing to the guest list to the truly unfortunate optics of a married woman effusively praising her married boss, while her husband stood in the background looking like he wanted to die. There were quotes from anonymous industry insiders talking about how everyone at Whitmore and Associates had known about the special relationship between Camille and Grant, how it had been an open secret that made everyone uncomfortable but nobody wanted to address because Grant signed the paychecks. There were breakdowns of professional ethics standards, citations of HR policies, even a helpful sidebar titled, 5 Signs Your Work Relationship Has Crossed a Line, with photos from the party illustrating each point. LinkedIn erupted. That was the only word for it. Erupted, like a volcano of professional judgment and performative outrage. Marketing professionals Camille had never met were writing think pieces about boundary violations. HR representatives were sharing the article with commentary about what not to do if you value your career. Her former colleagues, well, current colleagues, technically, though probably not for long, were conspicuously silent, not commenting, not defending her, just quietly unliking and unfollowing her profile like she'd contracted a contagious disease they didn't want to catch. The meme started around Wednesday. Someone created a most special guest template with Grant's face photoshopped onto various inappropriate scenarios, showing up to funerals, crashing weddings, sitting in on therapy sessions. Another person made a bingo card of corporate red flags, with toasting your boss at your birthday party as the free space in the middle. A particularly creative soul edited the Titanic sinking scene with Camille's face on the ship and professional reputation written on the iceberg. The internet, as it tends to do, had taken a genuine disaster and transformed it into entertainment. Even Camille's intern, a 22-year-old kid named Tyler who wore Supreme hoodies to the office and communicated primarily through memes, got in on the action. He posted a GIF of Michael Scott from The Office with the caption, "When your boss's birthday invite turns into an HR investigation," and tagged it with crying laughing emojis. The kid got 5,000 likes in 3 hours and a reputation as the funniest person at a company that was actively imploding. I actually respected his commitment to the bit. Camille, meanwhile, tried to do what people always do when the internet turns against them. She tried to delete everything. Her Instagram posts from the party disappeared. Her LinkedIn profile got scrubbed of any photos that included Grant. She even tried to get Corporate Confessions to take down the article, threatening legal action for defamation, which just resulted in them posting an update with screenshots of her threatening emails and a new headline. Marketing director threatens blog, proves she still doesn't understand how the internet works. She called me during this digital purge, her voice tight with panic and rage. "You ruined my life," she shouted into the phone, like I'd personally written the article and forced everyone on LinkedIn to share it. "Everything I've worked for, everything I've built, it's gone. My reputation is destroyed. Nobody will hire me now. This is all your fault." I was at the gym when she called, on a treadmill, having probably the best workout I'd had in months because stress apparently makes me run faster. "No, darling," I said, not even breathing hard, my tone as casual as if we were discussing the weather. "You did that with good lighting and bad decisions. I just provided the documentation. The internet did the rest, and honestly, they did a better job than I ever could have." That bingo card was particularly inspired. She screamed something incoherent about how I'd betrayed her, how I'd violated her trust, how I was a vindictive asshole who'd orchestrated this entire thing just to hurt her. Then she pivoted to threats. "I'm going to sue you," she declared, like she'd just discovered the secret weapon that would solve all her problems. "My lawyer says I have grounds for intentional infliction of emotional distress. You deliberately destroyed my career." I actually stopped running for that, stepped off the treadmill, and took a long drink from my water bottle while she continued ranting. "Please do," I said when she finally paused for breath. "Please, I'm begging you, sue me. Take me to court. Put everything on the public record. We can depose Grant, get all those midnight texts admitted as evidence, really air out every detail of your professional mentorship for a judge to examine. And when you lose, because you will lose, I'll bill you for my legal fees, emotional damages, and all the snacks I've been stress eating while watching your career implode. The therapy-grade dark chocolate alone is going to cost you a fortune." Grant showed up at my house the next day looking like he'd just gone 12 rounds with reality and lost every single one. This wasn't the polished, sunglasses-wearing, gift-bag-carrying corporate peacock who'd strutted into Camille's birthday party like he owned the world. No, this was a man who'd discovered that consequences were real and they had teeth. His eyes were bloodshot red, the kind of red that comes from either crying, drinking, or staring at financial statements that prove you're completely screwed, possibly all three. His tie was crooked, hanging at an angle that would have made his tailor weep, and his expensive suit looked like he'd slept in it, which he probably had, assuming he'd slept at all. He was breathing like a man who'd just watched his stock portfolio spontaneously combust, heavy and ragged, like his lungs were struggling to process air and existential dread at the same time. I heard the doorbell ring while I was in the kitchen making my second cup of coffee of the morning, which was quickly becoming my favorite hobby, drinking coffee while watching other people's lives fall apart. It's cheaper than therapy and significantly more entertaining. I glanced at the security camera feed on my phone and almost choked on my Danish when I saw Grant standing on my front porch, looking like a before photo in an ad for anxiety medication. This was going to be good. This was going to be really, really good. I briefly considered not answering, just letting him stand out there and marinate in his own panic, but that seemed wasteful. When karma delivers entertainment directly to your doorstep, you don't ignore it. You answer the door with coffee in hand and a smile on your face. I took my time getting to the door, letting him ring the bell twice more, letting him shift his weight from foot to foot like a kid who needs to use the bathroom. When I finally opened it, I didn't say anything, just stood there sipping my coffee and looking at him with the polite curiosity you'd give a door-to-door salesman trying to sell you something you absolutely don't need. He looked worse up close, like stress had physically aged him about 10 years in the span of a week. There were dark circles under his eyes that no amount of expensive skincare could hide, and his signature slick-back hair was falling forward in a way that made him look less powerful executive and more guy who's been pulling his hair out in a panic. "Where is she?" he demanded, his voice cracking slightly, that executive authority he usually carried completely absent. "Where's Camille? I need to talk to her. Now." He tried to push past me into my house. My house, not our house, not his house. Definitely not a place he had any right to enter, but I shifted my weight and blocked the doorway with the casual ease of someone who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. "Well, good morning to you too, Grant," I said pleasantly, like we were neighbors having a friendly chat about the weather instead of two men on opposite sides of a professional disaster. "Beautiful day, isn't it? Would you like some coffee? I just made a fresh pot. It's that organic fair trade stuff Camille always insisted on buying. Tastes exactly the same as the cheap stuff, but it costs 3 times as much, so you know it's good." I don't want your fucking coffee, he shouted, loud enough that Mrs. Chun from next door probably heard and was already mentally composing the neighborhood Facebook post about it. I want Camille. Do you have any idea what you've done? What she's done? The company is falling apart. We're hemorrhaging clients. The board is calling emergency meetings. Lawyers are crawling through every document we've produced in the last 5 years. He stopped, breathing hard, his face flushed red with rage and panic and whatever other emotions were fighting for dominance. This is your fault. You did this. Did I? I asked, genuinely curious about his logic. Because from where I'm standing, I just followed proper legal protocol and disclosed a conflict of interest. Everything that happened after that was just people doing their jobs. Lawyers investigating, clients making business decisions, the internet being the internet. I'm just one guy, Grant. I don't have the power to destroy a company. But you know what does have that power? Fraud. Financial misconduct. Cooking the books while your marketing director publicly celebrates you as her most special guest and creates a paper trail that any first-year law student could follow. That'll do it every time. Camille appeared then, emerging from somewhere inside the house where she'd apparently been hiding or gathering courage or maybe just applying more makeup because she looked camera-ready despite the fact that her entire life was imploding. She was wearing one of those athleisure outfits that cost more than most people's monthly grocery budget, like she'd decided that if she looked put together enough, maybe reality would get confused and leave her alone. Grant, she said, her voice small and uncertain. What are you doing here? He whirled on her like she'd just admitted to burning down his office building. What am I doing here? What am I doing here? His voice went up about 3 octaves, hitting notes I didn't think the human male voice was capable of reaching. What did you make him do? The company's freezing accounts because the legal review found discrepancies, major discrepancies, and now they're saying it's connected to your husband's disclosure. HR's in complete meltdown. Half the staff quit yesterday. Our biggest investor pulled out this morning. The trade publications are writing obituaries for us while we're still technically alive. I leaned against the doorframe, sipping my coffee, watching this unfold with the detached appreciation of someone watching a really good movie. This was better than Netflix. This was better than HBO. This was live-action karma, and I had the best seat in the house. Camille stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind her like that would somehow contain this disaster or keep me from hearing every word. Spoiler alert, I could still hear everything, and I wasn't planning on going anywhere. Grant, I don't understand, she said, trying that placating tone she used when she was managing difficult clients. Mason just filed a disclosure. That's standard procedure. It doesn't mean anything. IT means everything. He was fully shouting now, hands gesturing wildly, that corporate composure completely shattered. You posted evidence, Camille. You tagged me in photos. You wrote captions about how I'm your most special guest and your incredible mentor. You created a public record of our relationship right as the company was under legal review. Do you know what that looks like? Do you have any idea how that appears to investigators? They're saying you might have known about the financial issues. They're implying you were involved, that maybe I told you things I shouldn't have, that our special relationship, he made angry air quotes, compromised the integrity of the company. Camille's face went pale, all that carefully applied makeup suddenly looking like paint on a statue. But I didn't know anything. I'm in marketing. I don't even have access to the financial systems. That's not what it looks like, Grant shouted, and I noticed his hands were shaking. It looks like the CEO and his marketing director were having an inappropriate relationship, and when the company started getting investigated, her husband, a lawyer, conveniently disclosed everything to protect himself while throwing both of us under the bus. I had to give him credit. That was actually a pretty accurate summary, though his use of the word inappropriate was doing a lot of heavy lifting. I cleared my throat from the doorway, drawing both their attention. I hate to interrupt what seems like a really productive conversation, I said, my tone so dry you could use it to start fires, but I feel like I should clarify something. I didn't throw anyone under any bus. I simply informed my employer that I had a personal connection to a company under review, which is literally required by my employment contract and, basic legal ethics. What happened after that? The investigation, the findings, the clients leaving, the internet turning your birthday party into a meme. That's all just consequences of choices you both made. I'm not the villain in this story. I'm just the guy who pulled the fire alarm when I noticed the building was already burning. Camille turned to look at me, and there was something in her expression I'd never seen before. Genuine horror, mixed with a dawning realization that maybe, just maybe, she'd massively miscalculated who she was married to and what he was capable of. "Mason, please," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "Please, fix this. You know people. You have connections. You can make some calls and explain that this is all a misunderstanding. Fix this." I interrupted, genuinely amused by the audacity. "Camille, sweetheart, I'm a corporate attorney, not a wizard. I can't just wave a magic wand and make fraud investigations disappear. I can't unring bells or unpost Instagram photos or convince the internet to forget about the time you publicly declared your boss your most special guest. But you know what? Even if I could fix this, I wouldn't. Because I'm on vacation from stupid decisions. Your stupid decisions, specifically. I've been enabling them, tolerating them, quietly managing them for 6 years, and I'm done. This is your mess. You made it. You can figure out how to clean it up." Grant took a step toward me, and for a second I thought he might actually try to hit me, which would have been hilarious given that he had 50 pounds on me, but looked like a stiff breeze would knock him over at this point. "You self-righteous son of a bitch," he hissed, his voice low and dangerous. "You destroyed everything. My company, my reputation, Camille's career. You destroyed all of it because of what? Jealousy? Revenge? Because your wife paid attention to someone else." I set down my coffee cup carefully on the little table by the door and looked him dead in the eyes. "No, Grant. You destroyed everything because you couldn't keep your books clean or your hands professional. I just documented it. There's a difference." I smiled then, a real smile, the first genuine one I'd felt in weeks. "But please, keep yelling at me. Mrs. Chin next door has probably already got her phone out. This'll make excellent content for the Neighborhood Watch Facebook group." Grant stood there for another moment, breathing hard, his face cycling through about 15 different emotions before landing on defeat. "You've destroyed everything," he said finally, his voice hollow. "Everything I built, everything I worked for, it's gone. And for what? A birthday party? Some Instagram posts?" He turned to Camille, and I almost felt bad for her when I saw the look he gave her. "Almost. This is your fault. You and your need for attention, your need to broadcast everything, to make everything about you. I hope it was worth it." Then he left, stumbling down my porch steps like a drunk man, getting into his overpriced luxury sedan and driving away without looking back. I watched him go, then looked at Camille, who was standing there with tears running down her face, mascara starting to run, her carefully constructed appearance finally cracking. I wanted to clap. I wanted to give a standing ovation. 5 stars. Would watch again. Absolutely worth the price of admission. Camille thought things couldn't get worse after Grant's meltdown on my front porch, which just proves that optimism is basically a form of denial with better PR. Because things absolutely got worse. So much worse. Like exponentially, catastrophically. Maybe I should fake my own death and start a new life in a country with no extradition treaty worse. And it all started with an article, because of course it did, because we live in an age where your entire existence can be dismantled by someone with a laptop, an opinion, and a decent Wi-Fi connection. The headline appeared on a business news website called Corporate Insider, which isn't quite as prestigious as the Wall Street Journal, but carries way more weight in the world of office gossip and professional schadenfreude. Marketing director accused of ethics breach over birthday affair. That was the headline, and let me tell you, it was a masterpiece of strategic word choice. Not involved in or connected to. No, they went with accused of, which carries just enough legal weight to sound serious without being actionable. And that word affair sitting right there at the end, doing double duty as both a reference to the birthday party incident and a sly implication about what might have been going on between Camille and Grant. Brilliant, really. Whoever wrote that headline deserved a raise and probably got one based on the traffic that article generated. The article itself was everywhere within hours. LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, even TikTok, where someone had made a dramatic reading of the key passages over footage of sinking ships and exploding buildings. Her photo was plastered across social media. That specific photo from the birthday party where she's raising her champagne glass toward Grant, her smile bright enough to power a small city, her hand extended toward him in what the article described as a gesture of intimate familiarity inappropriate for a professional relationship. The photo was cropped, zoomed, enhanced, and analyzed like it was the Zapruder film of corporate misconduct. People were counting the distance between her and Grant, measuring the angle of her smile, debating whether that was just professional admiration in her eyes or something significantly less appropriate. LinkedIn absolutely roasted her, and if you've never witnessed a LinkedIn roasting, let me tell you, it's a special kind of brutal. Because LinkedIn users don't just criticize, they criticize while simultaneously humble bragging about their own superior ethics and professional judgment. It's like getting kicked while you're down, except the person kicking you is also handing out their business card and asking if you've considered their leadership coaching services. The comments section under that article was basically a masterclass in professional passive aggression disguised as concern. One comment that got over 3,000 likes read, "Bold of her to mix work and wine like they're ingredients in a recipe for disaster. Must be networking 2.0. As someone who spent 15 years building authentic professional relationships based on mutual respect and clear boundaries, I find this deeply troubling. #leadership, #ethics, #professional development. The hashtags were the chef's kiss on that particular burn, really driving home that this person wasn't just judging Camille. They were using her downfall as content for their personal brand. Another gem. I've always maintained that your reputation is your currency in this industry. This situation is a perfect case study in how quickly that currency can become worthless. In my upcoming webinar, Boundaries, the Key to Professional Success, we'll be discussing exactly these kinds of scenarios. Link in bio. #career advice, #professional boundaries, #thought leadership. I actually laughed at that one, sitting in my home office with my coffee, watching Camille's professional reputation get commodified into marketing material for someone's coaching business. The internet is a beautiful, terrible place. Even her intern, that kid Tyler with the Supreme hoodies, got in on the action, and his post might have been my favorite of all. He posted a meme featuring Michael Scott from The Office looking confused, with the caption, "When your boss's birthday invite turns into an HR investigation," accompanied by 3 crying laughing emojis and a skull emoji for good measure. The kid got 5,000 likes in the first 3 hours, 1,500 comments ranging from "dead skull" to "this is why I love Gen Z," and a reputation boost that probably positioned him nicely for his next job interview. Someone in the comments offered him an internship on the spot. Another person asked if he was available for freelance social media management. The kid had turned his boss's downfall into a career opportunity, which was either incredibly savvy or morally questionable, depending on your perspective. Personally, I thought it was hilarious and sent him a connection request. The memes multiplied like rabbits on energy drinks. Someone created an inappropriate work relationships starter pack featuring a champagne glass, a red dress, sunglasses worn indoors, and a screenshot of Camille's most special guest toast. Another person made one of those corporate bingo cards where the free space in the middle said, "Publicly praising your boss at your birthday party," and the surrounding squares included gems like "Midnight text from CEO," claiming its mentorship, "Spouse walks out mid-party," and "Company under investigation." I saw at least 15 different variations of the "Is this a butterfly?" meme with someone pointing at a photo of Grant and asking, "Is this professional development?" Twitter was somehow even worse, because Twitter users have mastered the art of being devastating in under 280 characters. Imagine ending your career over birthday cake. Couldn't be me. That one got 20,000 likes. She really said, "Let me destroy my marriage, my job, and my reputation in one toast," and then actually did it. Icon behavior, honestly. 15,000 retweets. The way she tagged him most special guest, like she was accepting an Oscar for worst professional judgment. 10,000 likes and 300 quote tweets, each one more brutal than the last. Someone made a TikTok video with that "Oh No" song playing over a slideshow of photos from the party, zooming in on Mason. That's me. Hi. Standing in the background of various shots looking progressively more dead inside. The caption read, "POV. You're watching your marriage end in real time, but the appetizers are really good, so you stay." It got 2 million views in 36 hours and spawned approximately 400 duet videos of people recreating my exact facial expression. I became a meme without even trying, which is either the height of modern fame or a sign that society has completely lost the plot. Probably both. Camille tried everything to stop the bleeding, which only made it worse because the internet never forgets and it absolutely hates when you try to make it forget. She started by deleting the original Instagram posts from the party, which was cute but pointless since approximately 300 people had already screenshot them. Those screenshots were now circulating with watermarks and red circles and arrows pointing to every questionable detail. She scrubbed her LinkedIn profile of any photos that included Grant, but someone had archived her entire profile history and posted a before and after comparison with the caption, "The internet remembers, a photo essay." She changed her privacy settings on every social media platform, but by then her accounts had been screenshotted, her posts had been archived, and her digital footprint was preserved for posterity, whether she liked it or not. Then she made the classic mistake that everyone makes when the internet turns against them. She tried to fight back. She posted a statement on LinkedIn, against my advice, not that she asked for it, explaining that the party had been a celebration with colleagues, and that any implication of impropriety is completely unfounded and hurtful. The post was professional, measured, carefully worded to avoid admitting anything while also attempting to sound reasonable and victimized. It might have worked in a different context, maybe even 5 years ago before social media turned everyone into an amateur prosecutor. But in 2025, posting a defensive statement when the internet has already decided you're guilty is like throwing gasoline on a fire and expecting it to help. The comments started immediately. So calling your boss your most special guest is just colleague things? Good to know. The impropriety isn't implied. It's explicitly documented in approximately 50 Instagram posts. Ma'am, this is a Wendy's. That last one didn't even make sense in context, but got 800 likes anyway, because internet humor operates on its own logic. Her former colleagues maintained radio silence, which spoke volumes in that specifically corporate way where not saying anything says everything. Nobody defended her, nobody vouched for her character, nobody posted supportive comments or tried to contextualize the situation. They just quietly unliked her posts, disconnected from her on LinkedIn, and pretended they'd never known her well enough to comment. It was the professional equivalent of watching someone drown from the shore and deciding that getting wet wouldn't be a good career move. Brutal, but understandable. Nobody wanted to tie themselves to a sinking ship, especially not when that ship was actively being memed into oblivion. The trade publications picked up the story next, because apparently, Camille's downfall was newsworthy enough to merit actual journalism. Marketing Week ran a piece titled, "When Personal Branding Goes Wrong, Lessons from the Whitmore Scandal." Adage did a feature on the blurred lines between mentorship and misconduct. Even Forbes got in on the action with an article about the hidden costs of workplace relationships that used Camille's situation as the lead example. She'd become a cautionary tale, a teaching moment, a case study in what not to do if you value your career or your sanity or your ability to show your face in professional settings ever again. I watched all of this unfold from the comfort of my home office, my sanctuary, my front row seat to Karma's greatest hits. Camille would come storming in periodically, her phone clutched in her hand like it was a weapon or a lifeline or maybe both, showing me the latest article or meme or comment thread like I was supposed to do something about it. "Look at this," she'd shout, shoving her phone in my face. "They're calling me Birthday Cake Barbie. There's a whole hashtag. Mason, you have to make this stop." But I couldn't make it stop, and honestly, I wouldn't have even if I could. This wasn't my doing anymore. This was the internet being the internet. This was consequences having consequences. This was the natural result of making spectacularly bad decisions in an age where everything is documented, shared, and preserved forever. Sorry, sweetheart. I'd say not sorry at all. I'm fresh out of magic wands, and the genie's not taking my calls. Maybe try apologizing to the internet. I hear that always works great and definitely never makes things worse. She tried that too, eventually, posting a more comprehensive apology that acknowledged poor judgment and regrettable optics, while stopping just short of admitting to anything actually actionable. It got ratioed, which means more people commented negatively than liked it, within 20 minutes, and someone made a bingo card of corporate apology cliches with her post hitting basically every square. Camille showed up to work on Monday morning like she was about to fix the Titanic with duct tape and sheer determination. I wasn't there to witness it personally, but I got the full report later from Tyler, the intern who'd memed her into oblivion and apparently felt guilty enough to send me a detailed play-by-play. According to his eyewitness account, she walked into the Whitmore and Associates building wearing her best power suit, the navy one she'd bought specifically for difficult client meetings, her hair blown out to perfection, her makeup applied with the precision of someone going into battle. She looked ready to fight, ready to negotiate, ready to somehow salvage her career from the burning wreckage of the last 2 weeks. Her security badge didn't work. She swiped it once at the entrance turnstile, got a red light and an angry beep. Swiped it again, same result. The security guard, a guy named Marcus who'd seen her come and go for 3 years, wouldn't make eye contact. Just handed her a sealed manila envelope with her name printed across the front in that impersonal corporate font that screams, "Your life is about to get worse." She apparently stood there for a solid 30 seconds, staring at that envelope like it might spontaneously combust if she looked at it hard enough, before finally opening it with shaking hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Not multiple pages of explanation or justification or carefully worded corporate doublespeak. Just one clean, brutal sentence. Termination of employment. Effective immediately. And there at the bottom, right above the company seal and the HR director's signature, was another name. A name that made her face go pale, made her knees literally buckle according to Tyler's dramatic retelling. Authorized by General Counsel Mason R. Hale. She looked up from the paper, blinking like the letters might rearrange themselves into something different, something less devastating, something that didn't confirm her worst suspicion. "You," she whispered, though I wasn't there to hear it. "You did this." Tyler said the security guard offered her a tissue box. Marcus, the real MVP of this story, apparently kept emergency tissues at his desk specifically for moments like this. Camille didn't take one. She just stood there, staring at my signature, probably realizing that her husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, had just fired her using nothing but proper legal channels and perfectly executed revenge. I offered her silence. It was the kindest thing I could give. That night, Camille came home. Well, to my house, since calling it home implied she still belonged there, and found me packing my suitcase. Not frantically, not emotionally, just methodically folding clothes and placing them in neat rows like I was preparing for a business trip that happened to be permanent. She stood in the doorway, mascara streaked, pride shattered. "We can fix this," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I handed her the divorce papers I'd been saving for exactly this moment. Perfectly drafted, perfectly timed. "You already fixed it for me." As I walked past her, rolling my suitcase toward freedom, the doorbell rang. Excellent timing, as always. A courier stood there holding an official-looking envelope, which he handed directly to Camille. She opened it with trembling hands, her eyes scanning the document before her knees gave out entirely. Legal notice. Repayment of performance bonuses totaling $130,000, issued based on fraudulent company earnings under Grant Whitmore's direction. Due immediately. I stepped over her, literally, and walked to my car without looking back. No screaming, no dramatic speeches, no movie-worthy confrontations. Just peace. Because some men destroy you with rage and violence and public spectacles. I prefer invoices and silence.